Okay, hi everyone. Today I invited my friend Lindiwe. Hello, my darling.
Hello.
And we met this fall at the Center for Mind Body Medicine. I had the privilege of being in a group with you.
Oh, very sweet.
And the reason that I asked you to come on and have this conversation is that I think I'm really curious about your story and path with your work and how it's evolved because I want you to talk about it in your language and your words. But what I know about you is that you were on a path that was very clearly defined, that is in a very competitive, masculine, like one way of doing things.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
you kind of veered and pivoted. And then that's when we met in mind body medicine. So talk a little bit about your career in medicine and the journey and experiences.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you, Pleasance, for having me on. Very excited and feel very honored that you'd asked me to do this with you today. So I guess you'd have, as they say, you got to go way back.
Way back.
So, way back. So, um, for the listeners, my name is Lindiwe Greenwood. That's my professional name. Which is a little different than my personal name, which I like it like that, but that's another story. And so I wanted to be a doctor since I was 8 years old. I could pinpoint. And so my path was kind of, once you decide you want to become a doctor, your path does kind of get set for you. Now the path has not always been straight. We'll talk about that a little bit, but it does become almost defined for you the way and prescribed for you, quite frankly. And
why did you want to become a doctor? Do you know?
um, I think that very early on, I was very drawn to science. I had an amazing science teacher. Um, I remember his name, Mr. Graziano, and he was kind of like, looking back, Jack Black is younger than me, but he was like a Jack Black School of Rock type of teacher. I mean, he
Cool.
used to make up these songs about mold and just really kind of zany, and it was a lot of fun. And I was in special science and I liked it. And I was always attracted to wanting to work with children. So very early on, I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician. I'm not a pediatrician. I'm actually a family medicine doctor, but we work with all ages. And so that just kind of got set in my mind. I have a lot of nurses in my family, but I can't really say, I don't know anybody else who's a doctor in the family. And that was not one of those prescribed courses of professionalism, like so many people, quite frankly, I went to school with. They came from doctor dynasties.
Yeah.
And so, so taking all of that, I did a lot of different sciencey type things, but I've always been a very, and I don't say this complimentary, just as more of descriptive. I've always been a well-rounded person. So I'm also a singer. I like to write. I was very athletic in high school, and I'm very artsy. So
you're a Renaissance woman.
I'm a Renaissance woman, which is so funny you'd say that, because the name of my company is Total Renaissance Wellness. But again, that's another story. So
I didn't know that.
yeah. And so on my path, one of the things that really cemented it is in high school, they had this program called the Mentor Program. And they basically put you with people in the community who had your interests and were doing it professionally. And so I worked for this bio technical firm, and my work with them there in high school basically allowed me to win the state science fair, and I went on to the international science fair, and that was like a big deal at the time. And I applied to medical school, went to medical school, and I would say sometime around, I'm skipping, I'm so sorry. I did not go from high school to medical school. For those of you who are listening, I am not Doogie Howser, MD. I went from high school into college, and it was probably around that time when I went to college at University of Virginia. I knew that even though I want to be a doctor, I was not, and I almost hate to say this, but I was not a stereotypical entrant into medical school. I knew that I had an interest in holistic and complementary things. At the time, I didn't really know what that was, but looking back, I was always kind of drawn to those kind of things. And so once I went to UVA and then went on to University in Maryland, and started to get more of a vision and access to the patient population, it really reaffirmed the whole attraction to holistic and complementary medicine, to be honest with you, because a lot of the patients I didn't feel like were necessarily being reached in the way that I felt like maybe they needed to be reached. I can't even really articulate that, but even back then I knew that I wanted to approach medicine differently. And so I did all the usual things. Medical school was not easy for me. Was always a good student, but I am a layer learner, and I learn in a very tactical and engaging way. So the first 2 years of medical school are really all about reading in a book, and that's not my personality. And the second 2 years are about engaging with patients and people, which is my personality. And that's where and when I kind of came alive. And so also around that time, I was not doing the greatest in a class, and I decided to disengage from the class and took a class up in Burlington, Vermont, of all places. And I had another funky teacher who was amazing, Dr. Silverman, who used to come to class with no shoes and sit in the middle of the floor. And basically, he made me love microbiology, something that I was not doing well in. And it was all about him teaching me about the coursework in a very tactical and practical way. And during that time, they had something called the Whole Life Expo. And that Whole Life Expo was all these funky people who were into auras and chakras.
Oh, that's awesome.
But back then, it wasn't as mainstream as
Yeah.
it is now, if it's even mainstream. I don't know if that's the right word. And I remember having my runes read, and I didn't even know what a rune was. And anyway, just giving you the flavor that I went there and I was energized, and I just liked that people had different ways of approaching this life. And I decided back then that I wanted to bring that more holistic way of getting through this life in this world back to my work as a doctor. And so another rotation that we have in medical school is to do work with the Indian Health Service. And so I spent several months on the Apache Indian Reservation out in White River, Arizona.
Wow.
And I learned a lot there as well. And where I'm going with this is I've tried to take little bits and pieces of my life outside of what I learned in the classroom and brought it to my practice. And then when I spent my time in residency in East Carolina University, which is more of a rural part of North Carolina, that was a whole nother set of patient population. So just have worked with a lot of different people. And the common thread was people needed more self-care, and they needed access, and not just access to care, another doctor. They needed people who were really in tune and engaged with them and whatever that meant for them. And so when I decided, after working at a federally qualified health center after residency, when I decided to leave there, I knew I wanted to open my own practice, which at the time people thought was crazy because unlike in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and really 90s, where people were encouraged to do that, right about this time is where doctors became more employees. And again, not really my personality. So I knew I wanted to be able to do things with my personal stamp on it. And that's when I opened my practice. At the time, that was Renaissance Primary Care and Wellness Group. And I had a water wall. I played spa music all day. It was aesthetically pleasing. I just tried to bring these little touches to the practice. And I started offering, let me back up a little bit. So right around that time of opening the practice, I knew that I wanted to do some coursework and become more educated in a more holistic path of medicine. But I wanted it to be done by for lack of a better word, a traditional Western physician, which, in the holistic circles, traditional is Eastern.
Right.
I know. But being a doctor that was trained in the US, I'm saying it more. I wanted someone who had gone to medical school, knew about research studies, knew about the things, Western medicine, because fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I knew that I needed what I was learning to be legit and to be perceived as legit if I was going to use it in my toolkit, quite frankly. And so that's right about the time, that was back in 2007-ish, 2008, where I got on the internet and Googled that, and Dr. Jim Gordon came up with the Center for Mind Body Medicine. And I was like, he is a psychiatrist who is trained from Harvard. I don't think I can get any more legit / traditional than
he's
this.
A white guy.
So that's when I started my journey with the Center for Mind Body Medicine. And the rest, as we said earlier, is history. And so I have been on that journey for, for 11 years now. I am now certified in mind body medicine. I've done an internship. I've done advanced coursework with the Food is Medicine program there. And it has been a gift, and it has been a wonderful ride. And I have tried to impart and use those techniques, that model, that thinking, that community feel with my patients in the exam room. And then talking about that windy road, not the straight road. And many people do everything within like a year, which is amazing to me. It took me a decade and a year to get there because of life and all the different amazing, wonderful, terrifying things that have happened between that time. But I have a mind blank. What was I saying?
Your winding road.
Yeah. So the road was very windy, and I just was looking to. Oh, thank you. Okay. So after I had my practice, unfortunately, I opened my practice at the beginning of at the top of the bubble that we had right before the recession, and it takes a year to open a business.
Yeah, or 3.
So, right. Well, definitely 3 to get it up and going, right? And so, basically, I took that time to open the business. Then we had the business. When I started, there were 0 patients. And when I ended, there were 1,500 patients. And my tagline at the time was comprehensive care with a compassionate flair. And so that really resonated with people. And a little secret, which now won't be a secret since it'll be on this podcast, I can't even tell you in the early days. Yes, I spent a lot more time with patients because I had the time. I didn't have patients. But even as time went on, I really did not. It's not like I spent an hour and a half with patients, whereas usually you get 7.5 minutes with your doctor. But I really tried to make the patients feel like I gave them an hour and a half of time. And I just put that out there because people just want to be heard. They want to be heard. They want to be validated. And they want to be cared for. And so the practice grew. It was successful looking. However, when it came to the recession, when people had a light bill to pay or, you know, they had a water bill or the copay, they picked the water bill. And people don't think of their doctor as a business.
Right.
They don't think of the fact that, you know, I have to pay this rent, you know, I have to pay the staff that you see. I have to do all of those things. And so it became clear after 3.5 years that I had to close the practice. And that was, quite frankly, it was a death for me. It was my baby. I picked every stitch in the chairs that I picked out, the carpet, every little piece I picked. And that was a real mourning for me. But God is good. And I was able, right about that time, Hopkins was looking to expand, and they were having some of the practices were joining with them. And I was looking into that option. But what I ended up doing is coming on to Johns Hopkins Community Physicians as a float doctor. They basically created this position for me. A lot of people are familiar with floating nurses, but they do have locum tenens, which is quite frankly, it's not really a floating doctor, but it's a per diem type of doctor situation. But they hadn't had this at Hopkins. And so it was wonderful because around that time, I had a young, my middle child was young. I have 3. And it allowed me to dip in, see patients, and dip back out again and do it at my schedule. I didn't have to fight traffic because I could make the time. I didn't have to get involved with office politics because I was at different practices all over the state. And so that was wonderful. And I did that for a couple of years, and then a practice opened near me. And by that time I had my 3rd baby and I was ready to be in one place. And so I worked for Hopkins and did that full time. And then after that, in 2016, I just was at capacity. I was at capacity. Being a doctor is a full-bodied, full soul, full intention profession if you're doing it right. And so is being a mother. And I have and always will choose motherhood over any profession. So for me, I got to a point, I had 3 kids in 3 different schools. And you always, well, at least I shouldn't speak for someone else. For me, I thought the hard time and the time when I was most needed as a mom is when they were little, and they were what I call portable kids, you know, the kids in the carriers. But my daughter needed me more when she was in high school than really any other time. And I remember sitting at the computer and having so much that I needed to do. And I should make a note. I said I was full-time. I was really technically 0.8 time. But as many people know, when you're part-time, you're full-time. When you're full-time, you're time and a half. And so I think I got an email or something about them needing something more. And I was like, and it's right about the same time my middle son came in and he's like, "Mommy, why are you always on the computer?"
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, and my daughter needed something. And I was like, I can't do this. And mind you, we were a 2-income family, the 2-income life.
This is what I want to talk about. What happens behind the scenes in real life? Like, it's so nice to be like, I don't think I'm going to work anymore. And, and this. So what does that look like financially? What does that look like in your relationship, the conversations you have to have, and your sense of identity and purpose because you've spent all this time.
Mm-hmm.
So what
Mm-hmm.
did that feel like? What was that like?
So it was stressful.
Yeah.
First of all, there's this perception out there that if you're a doctor, you're rich, and that was never my reality. I am, shout out to all the working people out here. You know, I always say I am a frontline, hopefully this is okay to say, I'm a blue collar doctor in that I am a primary care doctor. Okay. So I am not, yes, doctors make good money when they're working, but my money was going out the door quicker than I can even get it in. So to now decide to not do that was like, it's difficult. But going back to this concept of self-care, how can I teach people how to be healthy and how to care for themselves? And I'm not doing that myself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And in so many professions, we are telling people how to do things we're not doing for ourselves. And so it was a necessity.
Yeah.
And my husband and my daughter, we talk about this more now, they saw it. It's funny, never once do I remember them saying, well, you can't do that. You cannot come home. It was like, look, it's going to be difficult, but we support you in it, because when I was stressed, I was bringing that home.
Yeah, of course.
When I was frustrated, I was bringing that home.
Yeah.
There were definitely conversations about the fact that we can't do all the things that we used to do.
Yeah.
And there's, we used to eat out. We used to do certain things every weekend when we had a ritual of eating out. We used to, I'm a member of several organizations that have dues. We have just creature comforts that you can become used to.
Yeah, certain
and
lifestyle.
Absolutely. And even things like, well, what if my daughter needs to go to a private school because the public school's not working out, or all of those things that when I had the practice, a lot of our personal resources were going into that. So whereas I had over time, I had built up savings and things to do, we didn't have that anymore. And so it was a true leap of faith to be able to leave the practice. I didn't have money. I didn't have a side gig. I didn't have a job. But it was like, well, we're going to do this, and we're all going to pitch in and do the things that we need to do to make that work. And so that was in 2016. And by the grace of God, we've been able to do that. There are times when, I can't do some of the things that I want to do. And then there are times when something comes along and we get blessed with something, or a bonus from my husband, or different things that we are able to do some of those things. But I made the right decision. I made the right decision. I look back on it. My daughter's now first year in college. My son is now 9, and maybe a different podcast, but he has life-threatening food allergies. So I needed to be able to manage those. My youngest child is 6, and he ended up having a speech delay at the time, and I was able to care for those needs. And he was in a program all but 2.5 hours a day. So that was my road dog. So to then be on the computer and trying to see patients and trying to be present, I just couldn't do it. And I was just very honest for my belief system with God that I need you to have me, because I can't. That statement we say, it's like, I just can't. And I was like, I can't. And so I felt like I can come back to the work. But I cannot come back to these kids. And that's what I did. And then, I'd find a little side hustle here. I would do some consulting on the side. And I always knew that I wanted to have my own health and wellness consulting business, because quietly medicine has been and was changing. And I wasn't sure that I was on board with it. I felt like there were a lot of clashing priorities, quite frankly, and it was becoming very businesslike.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, it's kind of like commodifying or becoming a business as a teacher. There's no place for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no place for that really in medicine. The bills have to get paid. I'm a businesswoman and entrepreneur, so I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just becoming going in a place, and I decided I really wanted to work with people on the other side. I wanted to keep them from getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to work with prevention, and I wanted to work with them when they were happy and before the crisis came.
Mm-hmm.
And so Total Renaissance Wellness is a health and wellness consulting business that has that's what I do now, that has 3 prongs. And there's that saying, adversity breeds ingenuity. It does. Right around that time, I wrote a book, and I was just thinking about ways I could bring my expertise, experiences to people that needed help, but I could do it from home and still be present to my son. And so that's when Total Renaissance Wellness was born. And there's 3 prongs of what I do now. There's kind of the health and wellness mind body medicine component. And in that I do all manner of health and wellness programming. I run mind body skills groups, mind body skills programming retreats, seminars, workshops. I have a vision to bring that work to the schools. I know you and I have talked about even doing some groups together, which I would love it, because it's a model that can be applied to many, many different communities and social constructs, quite frankly. And I also want to get in there to some of these companies and teach them corporate wellness, so we can be a more self-aware and self-affirmed society working. The second prong is the medical advocacy. There's 2 things I like to give credit when people give me wonderful things. My friend said, I basically help people maneuver the medical minutia. So the medical field can be, it can be overwhelming sometimes.
Totally.
And when you have 7.5 minutes with your doctor, and let me just say this, I'm very proud of my training. There are some amazing people that are doctors out here. I don't want to sound like I'm putting it down. It's just like any profession, there are things there are challenge areas, there are things that can be better. And so, and people are doing the best that they can. But I kind of help, and someone else said, when I describe what I do with the medical advocacy, she said, you're a medical doula. So
I love that.
Just kind of helping people navigate. You know, maybe your mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and she lives in Nebraska. You live here, and now you've got to bring her home. Like, what the heck do I do? What are the things that I need to get in place? It's not diagnosing, it's not treating, it's not writing a prescription. It's walking you through it, and being able to be a translator, an interceptor for you when maybe your loved one has to go to the hospital. I just was talking to a girlfriend last night. You know, they're saying all this stuff to her, and she's like, what are they saying? Lynn, what are they saying? It doesn't feel like they're doing X, Y, Z. And just having that person who speaks that language and saying, you need to ask them this, you need to say this. These are the things this is what the doc is thinking. Because I've been there. I've done all of that. I used to teach residents. I used to work inpatient. I've done a little bit of everything. And so that's the medical advocacy piece. And then the third piece is the food allergy awareness and advocacy, because having 2 children who had life-threatening food allergies, I'm proud to say they've gotten rid of, the one child only had one, and he got rid of that. So that's a miracle, really happy. And the middle one was allergic to peanut, tree nut, soy, egg, and shellfish. And he's now no longer allergic, for the most part, to the soy, and he's not allergic to the egg, and got rid of some of the tree nuts. So, but just that path that we were on that led to that discovery
Yeah.
There are other moms and dads out there who, you know, I felt like I could help. I wish I had someone who had gone through that. What is it to enroll a child with food allergies into a private school or a public school? What is it to have a play date? What do you do when you're traveling? How do you
There's so
navigate?
much.
Yeah, or if you don't even have a food allergy child, what is it to host one? To
Yeah.
have one over your house? How do you have your friend's child over and they feel like the child's going to be safe? You can cook for them. So, as well as, you know, talking to restaurants about how to become more food allergy and intolerance sensitive.
Yeah.
Conferences. So all of that, dealing with daycare workers, and teaching EpiPen safety and all of that kind of thing. So those are the three things that I do. I also just do some general health consulting, you know, people who are wanting to understand the mind in the track of the medical community and what works in practice versus reading something in an article. Because there are so many people so many businesses I've had experiences with where they want to have doctors or they want to engage medical professionals, but it's very clear that they have not worked in that environment and they need to have a better understanding of how that works. And so that is kind of my path of what I'm doing. Total Renaissance Wellness is new. We're budding and coming up. I am just starting to work on how to get my message and what I do out to people.
Yeah.
But all the while, I say all that just to say we're all just trying to do this thing called life, be the best parents that we can be. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, you're a policeman, a lawyer, you're the custodian, you're trying to just do what's best. And the road is not straight a lot of times. It is windy. I've had so many winds, twists and turns. And my new little mantra, I don't know if it was on somebody's cup or it was on a bag, but it said, making mistakes is better than faking perfection. And that just resonated with me, really resonated with me.
There's so many things that I love about what you shared. And one of the things that came to mind, and this, we'll talk about it offline and see, but I think what would be really fun is if we do a little series called like Q&A with Lindiwe. And we do, like, people could write to us health questions and we could talk about it from the East and West. And like, you can chime in on what you think, and then I can chime in on the Ayurvedic piece and address food allergies, anxiety, eczema, psoriasis, IBS, like literally all of these things that I'm getting asked, insomnia all the time. And we could do a little Q. Wouldn't that be so fun?
I am in.
That would be so fun.
I love it.
So
Q&A with Lindiwe.
Q&A with Lindiwe. Because the question that came to my mind was, how did you fix the food allergies? But that I know, let's just do that for our first Q&A one. Let's talk about the food allergy piece, because I'm sure it's more like it's in depth, and I want to, that's what I want to start with for our first Q&A. I want to hear about how you did that. But on the experience side, I guess, to sort of wrap up this episode, I want to talk about what you see as the main challenges between your training in Western medicine and what you learned from the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. Like, where were the commonalities and where were the differences? I'm not sure that the average person listening maybe understands or knows or even thinks about this. And the reason I want to bring it up is that if someone's listening and they're experiencing some kind of health crisis, the typical, like, it's very common to be in the habit of just going right to Western. And what I see happen often is, again, that sort of limited time with medication becoming a real first response because it's addressing the symptom very quickly. So can you talk a little bit about that and what you see or know?
Yes. So ultimately, I think both sides are they have the same goal, which is
Mm-hmm.
to help people to feel better and to live
Mm-hmm.
their best lives.
Mm-hmm.
I really do think that.
Yeah.
I really, and even, a lot of time pharmaceutical companies get slammed and all. I really do think ultimately everyone is looking to do that. Now, having said that, there are barriers. There are barriers, and there are things that sneak in that then skew that. And so, when I think about my my traditional training here, the model, and it's changed, it's better now, but the model deals with dis and ease, disease. Okay. And so we are telling people to do certain things, and people are varied. Some people do what you ask them to do, some people do not. Some people do what you ask them to do part of the time, the other part of the time they do not. This is
And
myself.
sometimes people lie.
Yeah, but I could say lots of that about that. Sometimes I want to be like, guys, I'm a doctor. If you tell me you didn't do this, I have ways to know that you did. But anyway, so with my training, number one, I won't say I never thought of this, but just to kind of get to the root of what you asked me, I feel like time is the issue. Time is a very big issue.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of time.
Why?
On nutrition.
Why?
We don't get there's so many things to learn. There's so many things to learn, and I don't think you build upon what you know. So your professors are teaching you what they learned, and they learned what their professors are teaching them. And there just wasn't a lot on nutrition. And honestly, I'd say nutrition is probably the biggest piece of what we're missing.
Yeah.
And you have to address people's habits, but a lot of it is habits around nutrition. And so when I think about the Center for Mind Body Medicine, it's about you taking time to hear and be in tune and know yourself. In medicine, a lot of times you just don't have that time, and you're trying to help so many people in a small amount of time, in a construct that is really not even set up for you, because your reimbursements, how you're getting people in and out of the door, all of that is based upon time and the value of it. I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying when I say that.
Money?
Yeah, I mean, really,
they need a certain amount of money in order to stay in
business. You have to be able to.
The insurance company layers, and
yes, so
that's all changed on the back end. So then on the front end, the system isn't right.
Exactly. So on the front end, it translates into less time with your patient.
Yeah.
Patients are frustrated. Patients aren't engaging with their doctors, and then they're not necessarily doing the things that they need to do, so they come back sicker. When they're sicker, with body medicine, where basically you are teaching self-care through things like meditation, biofeedback, drawing, understanding your history, all of these different types of things. You are delving into things that a lot of times we have no time for. When I run skills groups, that's the first thing everybody says. My mind is racing. I don't have time. I'm thinking about all the things that I need to do.
Yeah.
And that's not just that's the medical field's fault, but it's also us as a society's fault.
Right.
Everything
it's happening
is
in education. Yeah.
It's instant gratification. It's wanting a pill for everything. It's not taking the time to understand that I know that your child is feeling bad with that fever, but the fever is killing the very bugs that are making them sick. And it's a balance issue, quite frankly, Pleasance. It's a balance issue. And I do feel like the model for the Center for Mind Body Medicine teaches balance versus there's not as much balance on the Western side. In terms of when you use one versus the other, to me, it is all simultaneous. So obviously, if I were sick, and I have been sick, I am doing all of it. I am meditating to get my mind right. I am going to see my doctor. I am doing my preventive services. I am, if something needs a surgeon, I'm going to the surgeon. But I'm also doing my due diligence to make sure this is a person who treats their patients holistically. I am making sure I'm educated on what, because this is my famous saying, most patients are not doctors, but all doctors are patients. So we've all been there. We've all been there. And I know people think there's a velvet rope, a back room that we all go into and get the Cadillac of care. And no. Sometimes I've wondered, am I being punished for being a doctor as a patient, quite frankly. So saying that to say, if you're doing the self-care and you understand about being mindful and you understand about being present to your body, you are more apt to know when something is wrong. You are more apt to be able to engage with your provider, to be able to do the things that your provider is prescribing for you. If you are doing your research and making sure you're seeing a provider who also has, at least is open to your values or has the same values that you do, they're also open to helping you to use alternate modalities. So for instance, when someone comes in to see me and they have headaches, I'm talking to them about biofeedback. I'm talking to them about journaling. I'm talking to them about doing yoga. When people I was always prescribing yoga for high blood pressure. It doesn't mean I didn't write their prescription, but it does mean that my first line might be that, because I'm open to it. It doesn't mean that I just say, well, you've got high blood pressure, go do qigong and I don't see you back. It means I do that, but then I have them keep a log because I want to see. I want those data points to show me how it's helping them. And if it's not enough, I write them a prescription. But I'm also open to the fact that maybe they needed the prescription to begin with, but then when they got better, or they lost the weight, or they started a meditation practice and they no longer needed it, I take them off of it. So it's very simple things. It's understanding that sleep is just as powerful as a pill sometimes.
I just like to, yes. Yeah. And making sure that we have such a sleep epidemic. We definitely need to do an episode about sleep, a Q&A, because sleep is like a huge piece. And one of my teachers was recently talking about, like, we can't even start to tackle any of these other issues until we deal with the fact that people don't know how to fall asleep and don't know how to stay asleep, and our lives, we're like losing it all over. So that will be super juicy. I wanted to ask that question also because there is often a separation and an either or and a pitting them against each other. And this past summer, well, actually it was last spring, the movie about the Dr. Lad, who's like the main doctor for Ayurveda in the West. He's got the guy who sort of brought it here and is beautiful and wonderful and magical. And they did a documentary about him called The Doctor from India. It's so good. And at the end, his last line, he's like walking through the fields in India and there's all these neem plants around him. And he's like, it's not, the future is not going to be Ayurvedic medicine or allopathic medicine. The future is the integration of both. And when we can really own that they work together, that's when we're going to have this harmony, within ourselves and within nature. And for somebody who is really a leader of what could be considered like extreme natural medicine, because it's so much about herbs and plants and lifestyle, I love that he ended with that integration and that way of really addressing, like, please guys, don't say we don't need allopathic and don't not go to the doctor. Cause we have a ton of issues right now with, health issues with the rise of natural medicine and people not then getting expertise. So it's not a right or wrong. It's just a deeper conversation around what's happening and to really honor both and to have it be and it's all welcome here kind of conversation,
Absolutely. And it goes back to that balance that I was talking about. We're always all or nothing, or this is totally good. This is not good.
Right.
We're all drink lots of water. Don't drink any water.
Right.
Don't eat any carbs. Carbs are horrible. Okay. Eat carbs are great.
Right.
I know I'm diving into, we're all Democrats, we're all Republicans. No, most people are, there's balance there should be balance in everything that we do. For some things, you might use a little elderberry juice for this. And for something else, you might have to go to your rheumatologist because you need that prescription medication. But just, my grandmother lived to be 105.5. And when I look at her life, it was about balance.
Yeah.
It was about balance. She did not eat processed food. She made a lot of things and she was very active, but it was about balance. And she would tell you what kept her alive is butter and garlic, real butter.
Right.
So I think that's a great point, Pleasance, that we all have to work in concert together. And it's back to that whole concept of everything I learned to be, what is it? A good person I learned in kindergarten. Like, share.
I can't believe you just brought that up because I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about that poster for
get good sleep. Be nice to each other.
Because I want to do a writing that says like everything I learned. I haven't figured out the language yet. That's why I've been like marinating, but something about everything I learned, like I learned on the yoga mat, but I want to make a poster that does all the teachings of yoga that are not about touching head on the stage. It doesn't have anything to do with the physical body or the stretching. It has to do with the principles and the practices that you learn of self-awareness when you're on the yoga mat. Like that's actually what it's for. It's not for standing on your head. So I've been like, I want to draw this poster out of the kindergarten. So now that you just said that, I'm going to have to get this. Like it means, okay, we're going to make this thing.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So I'm excited to wrap up because I'm excited that we have some more episodes on these Q&As where we can do specific deep dives around topics. And I think that will be really powerful and really awesome. Until we get that set up, where can people find you and reach out to you? Website, email, where's the best place for them to find you?
So again, the company's called Total Renaissance Wellness, LLC. I am Dr. Lindiwe. That's spelled Lindiwe, but it's pronounced Lindiwe, Greenwood, Greenwood. For those of you all wondering, my name is South African. It means the one they waited for. So my website is www.inspirehealthwellness.com.
Got it.
You can also get to it, I believe, from www.drgreenwood.com with the doctor spelled out.
Okay. I'll link to those also.
Yes. And then in terms of, just if you're wondering, you're interested in what I told you that I do, but you're not sure if, it's a good fit or anything, just you can contact me there. Is it okay to give a phone number? Should I?
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with. Yeah.
Okay. So my direct email would be inspirewellness04@gmail.com.
Okay, cool.
And the company phone number is 443-718-9223.
And do you work with people only in person or on the phone also, just for people?
No, I do a lot lot of health coaching over the phone, by
Okay.
Zoom.
Okay.
In person, we do a little, just depends on what your needs.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure
and I
if
work
someone's
with,
not in the
yeah.
area. Okay, cool.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Lindiwe, I want to thank you for coming on and having conversation with me because I love you and we have lots of good ideas about working together, which I think is actually talk about balance. Do you know how one of the ways that I love to create balance as a wellness practitioner is by collaborating with other like-minded people who I love and adore, because it's not only fun and connecting and energizing, but it releases some of the stress of carrying everything on your own back.
Amen, sister.
So here's to strong women partnering with strong women and helping each other, like hold each other accountable for that sustainability piece in our mission to help people.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And I'm really excited about your business and your offerings and the allergy piece and the holding people's hands through this process. It's so important because I know so many people right now today who are going through medical and health crisis who feel so overwhelmed by the paperwork and the phone calls and the jargon. And and if you are either a caregiver or a patient, it is extremely stressful on both sides. So thank you. I love you. Mwah. Namaste. Om Shanti. Namaste. Now let's play. That's one of our things that we do.
I love
put
that.
a heart at your heart and then now let's play.
Right. I know that's right, girl. I know that's right.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.